Welcome, friends. Let me tell you the story of a man who thought it would be a good idea to record the process of glazing. Poor idiot. Chapter 1. What is glazing and wet blending? The video will be a long one because I don't want to cut any corners and show the whole process from start to finish. As in the previous videos, let us first Google what glazing and wet blending are. Glazing is a technique used to bring together light and dark tones and to bring out luminosity in a painting. There are several recipes for making a glaze. In the simplest terms, glazing consists of applying a transparent layer of paint over another thoroughly dried layer of opaque paint, usually with a wide, soft bristled brush. Wet blending very often has the name wet on wet, which makes a lot of sense when we think about it. We can see, for example, Laila Mev has already done a clip on wet blending. Please give her a like and subscribe to her channel. She does wonderful painting videos. Now we get into the Pirate Monkey painting website. The link will be in the description. Wet blending is exactly what you think it is. Blending paint while the paint is on your figure and it's still wet. This sounds tricky, but is actually much less difficult to accomplish than you would think. The basic premise goes something like this. Paint is applied and then more paint is applied on that wet paint. At this point, some type of transition is affected. Now there are some general rules to keep in mind. But let's not get much into definitions and just show how it works. Chapter 2. Preparing the miniature. Base color layers. First, of course, we have to block the colors that we will blend. Please remember that primer colors will be different from the one that you use, not as the primer. And therefore it is a good practice to give a layer of black over the black primer. I will blend Abaddon Black with Macragge Blue. A good idea here is always to make the highlight color a bit smaller than you initially wanted it to be because the blend will take additional space and will take some of the darker color space. For example, I have made a too big blue layer on the legs. And at the end, there was almost no black shadows in the right corner. Just something to think about. This is also always a great time to practice brush precision. Even if you are painting black over black, try to stay within the lines you want to cover. Chapter 3. Wet Blending, the traditional approach. Right. At the start of every technique, you will see a short 10-second description of the technique and how long did it take me to do it. Here, we will apply two thick layers next to each other, and then with a clean, slightly dry brush, make a horizontal or zigzag motion between the both layers in order to mix them. The process is then repeated until you get a satisfying result or more or less satisfying result. It can always be smoothed out with glazing afterwards. Please enjoy the process with some music in the background. Chapter 4. Wet Blending, my approach. Okay, so this is a small variation on the standard wet blending process, and I prefer this one. It requires some planning, but in my opinion it gives more control over the placement of the mixed area and the intensity of the wet blend. The result is more or less the same, but as I use more often this one, it became a faster technique for me, which is visible in the time needed to achieve the final result. What I do here is I take the darker paint and put a semi-thick layer next to the highlight. Afterwards, I take quickly the lighter paint, sometimes even without cleaning the brush, and apply this directly onto the previous still wet dark layer and move with this mixture, making vertical or zigzag moves more and more into the shadows. Then I clean my brush and take a little bit of the dark paint and do the same starting from the shadows. Then again the highlight paint until the two paints are mixed evenly and as I wanted on all of the area I assumed it should happen. Of course, it can always be smoothed out with glazing afterwards. Enjoy the process with some music in the background. Chapter 5. The Mad Marathon. Glazing the traditional way. Right, glazing. Something I am not very keen on, but it is very often a must when making a good model. You will see two types of glazing here. Something I call traditional glazing and glazing with a thicker layer. The whole process is very simple. You take some paint and add a lot of water or any kind of medium, for example glazing medium, and then mix until you get a very watery and runny mix. Then you load the brush with the mixture and put the brush on a paper towel. The paper towel should immediately start soaking the mix from your brush. Repeat until the paper towel will show almost no mixture exploding from the brush. Then you are ready to glaze. When you glaze blue paint over blue and black, you start from the black elements and move to the blue ones. This is very important because you will notice that most paint is deposited from the brush at the place where you finish the move. Very often it will be a lot of paint, and therefore it is important that this dot of diluted and watery paint will be on the same color and not on the different one. This will give a smoother blend. In the left up corner, there will be a layer counter through the whole process. It is there for you just to see how long it took me to do it, but also how precise it can be. Please consider that I will be using here not the thinnest glaze layers. Very often people make them even thinner, and then the result is even better, but it can take from 100 to 200 layers to blend two colors. Another thing to remember is that it will be easier and quicker to blend, for example, the same color in different hues, or colors that are close on the color wheel, like magenta with red, amber with yellow, or teal with blue. You will have a very bad time if you try to mix colors that are opposite on the color wheel. It is doable, but it might take some practice, a lot of space for the blend, patience, and of course time. Enjoy the process with some music in the background. Chapter 6: Glazing with Fat Layers. I had no better name for this process. The difference between fat glazes and traditional glazes is that you add less water or just use more paint. This allows for the mix to have more pigments inside and to give a more visible layer. I use very often fat glazes and then just a few thin glazes to soften the transitions. This does not give such a great effect but saves a lot of time, and in gaming pieces it is never visible. Additionally, I make a between color layer, which is a mix of the two that are supposed to be mixed, and put it on a place where they will mix. This helps the glazes to make a faster blend. You can play with the size of the mixed color, highlight, and shadow. Make each of them smaller or bigger, and then counteract with using more glazes of a specific color. It is a very organic process, and you decide which of the two blended colors are supposed to be the dominant ones. Remember, as with standard glazing, where you start and finish your brush move. Here we have a thicker glaze. Chapter 7: Glazing Shadows. The last way in which you can use glazes that I want to cover today is using glazes to make shadows or highlights on a base or layer color. I will show only shadows, but it works both ways. The process is once again the same as with standard or fat glazes. I take a black glaze and start at the spot where the glaze should be the lightest and move my brush where the shadow should be the thickest. I used more or less the same spot for starting for the whole glaze, but it is a good idea to make the glazed area smaller with each next glaze. This way you will get a nice shadow to light or light to shadow transition. And here we have the results. Please remember that these were fairly quick wet blends and glazes. If you want a smoother finish, you have to make them thinner or repeat the process even more times. What do you think? Please leave a comment. It will help me develop and make better content in the future. Don't forget to share, like and subscribe. Bye!